Welcome to the EOB podcast, where we talk about the weekend's box office and the new openings this week. I am Binh, and I'm going to be alone this weekend. I'm going to be doing this by myself since Sin won't be available. But hey, the party goes on. We can still have fun, can't we? So let's get going. Okay, coming in number one is Inside Out, the Pixar animation about what goes on inside a girl's head and how her emotions personified and how all the real life events affects her. It made 29.7 million over the weekend, experienced a 43.1% drop. Total right now is 445. And yeah, Inside Out, along with Jurassic World, experienced less than 50% drop off from weekend to weekend. So it's going to hang around in theaters. It's very leggy. So this is like two movies that are going to be the summer movies to beat. Even though Inside Out is the first movie in Pixar history to not open number one, it is still the second highest opener behind Toy Story 3. The number one spot is just for bragging rights, but in the grand scheme of things, this movie did extremely well. So I think Pixar and Disney, the parent company, is not complaining about the movie, and it's a huge success. I mean, as you can see, if you stroll down the toy aisles of stores, you will see all the Inside Out toys being sold out. It's a huge movie. It will do well for merchandising. I wouldn't be surprised if somehow we'll see an Inside Out 2 somewhere down the road, because if you know Disney, you know that they're very good at milking their properties. Yeah, so that means sequels and spin-offs and what have you. You know Frozen, they're getting a movie, they're getting a sequel. They're still working on it, and the same thing with Inside Out. They're working on sequels. We're seeing sequels for Finding Nemo, called Finding Dory. We're getting another Cars movie, another Toy Story movie, and another Incredible movie, Inside Out 2. We're seeing it at some point down the line. So yeah, another huge success for Pixar. So, and then the Good Dinosaur will come out sometime this year too, later this year, as I would say. And I see that movie is going to do well. Because I think even though it has a trouble production, I trust the Pixar Binh Trust to fix what's wrong with it, and it's going to be a big success as well, because hey, dinosaurs. And speaking of dinosaurs, coming in number two is Jurassic World. It ceded the top spot to Inside Out, but again, it did extremely well. It's the number one movie in 2015. I experienced a 46% drop off from the previous weekend. Made 29.2 million, and so far it made 556 million domestic. But worldwide it has already made 1.3 billion. It's like almost 1.4 on its all-time list. All-time list right now, it's at number 6. Just a tad behind Avengers Age of Ultron, but eventually, it'll cross it soon. It's only like a couple, like a million off or so. So it'll cross Age of Ultron as the top 5 movie of all time on the all-time list. We're not sure if it'll reach Fear 7 at number 4, with 1.5 billion, but we'll see. It still has ways to go. So, it may take its place as one of the top 5 movies. It will take its place as the top 5 movie, but where will it? No, we don't know. It could be number 5, stay at number 5, or it could be, overtake. It will take Fear 7 at number 4, but we'll have to see. And it's only in its 4th week, so it will still be in theaters for quite a while because of week-over-week drop-off. Only less than 50%, so it's going to be in theaters. It's going to be quite leggy. Okay, let's move on to number 3. We have Terminator Genisys. It's one of the new openings last week. It made 27 million over the weekend, but for the 5-day holiday gross, it made 42. I was projecting the movie to open somewhere in the 30 to 35 million range, but it's kind of there. If you take the 5-day figures, it's exceeded my projections, but if you take the weekend number, it underperformed. And one of the reasons is because, hey, Arnold Schwarzenegger is not a draw anymore, even though the Terminator brand is still strong, right? But Arnold is Terminator, and more importantly, James Cameron is Terminator. So without James Cameron to shepherd the franchise, they're not going to do that well, because James Cameron is able to use technology to its greatest effect, as with the Avatar movies, like Terminator 2, he kind of did this liquid metal thingy, and then with the Avatar movies, he did that for 3D. He pushed the limit of special effects. And for Terminator, they're kind of like recycling old material, kind of like takes bits and pieces of the previous movies and kind of like rejigger that and give us a new perspective on things. And sometimes they may not work well. So it's going to lose money domestically. But in overseas market, it's doing quite well. Like it already made 85 million overseas, but the movie cost like reportedly 150 to 155 million to make. So it's gonna need a lot of help from the foreign markets. Okay, so and they're planning 2 more movies after this one. So we have to see whether they'll decide to continue to go along with that plan. They'll have to see what the worldwide gross for Terminator Genisys is. Even though it made money overseas, they have to take into account the audience response, right? If they say, oh, even though the movie, because the brand is strong, but if the movie's not good, they will not turn out to the next movie and the one after that. So it's a risky gambit for the producers, Paramount and the others, and because the Terminator rights are heading back to James Cameron in 2019. They have to make the movie before that date, or else they couldn't capitalize on what they pay for the properties. So there you have it. Terminator Genisys will depend on the overseas market to see if we have any sequel, and after that it goes back to James Cameron, who may or may not decide to go back to work on this thing, because he has a lot on his plate, or movies that he's working on, like Battle Angel and others. Okay, let's move on to number 4, Magic Mike XXL. I predict the movie to make somewhere between 25 to 30 million, and it made 12 million over the weekend, but the 5-day is 27 million. So if you take the 5-day, I'm not that off, but still disappointing compared to the 39 million opening of the first movie. This is one of the sequel that really has no reason to exist, because the first movie made so much money. They are obligated to create a sequel because, hey, there's demand for this movie apparently. But the sequel, there's really no reason to watch, I guess, because hey, the story is like, I think Channing Tatum's character came out of retirement for kind of a reunion or something like that, and they know what they're in for. There's not much of a story here, I guess, and there's this more male objectification. You see male dancing, grinding, gyrating, and they know who the target audience for this movie is, and they're catering to that. And the movie is very front-loaded during Tuesday previews, and even the Wednesday opener. It made more than Terminator Genisys, but it dropped off a rock. It made less, even about half of what Terminator Genisys did. So that's what happened. Hugely front-loaded, female-oriented movie, and it's not as successful as this first movie. Disappointing, even considering the 40 million opening. But hey, it's one of those sequels that's just there. They're obligated to make it, not because they want to make it. Channing Tatum wrote the story, and then they just filmed it because, hey, there's honest demand for good-looking males with in states of undress. So and that movie kind of feels like that. So that's why you see this movie just catering to one specific type of audience, which is heavily female. Okay, coming in at number 5 is Ted 2. Extremely disappointing. In its second weekend, it made 11.1 million. 58 million domestic so far. Experienced a 66.7% drop. That's a huge drop off, and it's expected of comedies. First movie opened to 54 million. The second movie only opened to 33. So roughly a little bit half in that, right? Yeah, it's hard to do a sequel to comedies, especially a comedy as gimmicky as Ted. It's a foul-mouthed teddy bear. It seems like this franchise, or supposed franchise, or this property has run its course. We probably won't see a Ted 3 because Ted is a special effect, and special effect costs money to make. I think the budget was around 60 or 70 million or so. With Ted 2, it's at around its budget level. Let's see how it will do overseas. Overseas is at 96. So remember when I said that Ted is one of those movies that travel well because it made more overseas than domestically. This movie, Ted 2, is doing kind of worse overseas than domestic. So I guess they're seeing this as well. But we'll see how wide it is overseas, because it might not be. It could be that it hasn't opened in the major markets like China, Japan, etc. yet. That's why we're seeing a low foreign figures. But then again, right now, the worldwide figures is 96. It's kind of very extremely disappointing for Universal. So maybe Seth MacFarlane's time has come and gone. You know, his comedy is kind of failing at the box office right now, right? Ted is huge for him. You know, Seth MacFarlane's the guy who did the American Dad, I think, or one of the cartoon shows on TV. And then his A Million Ways to Die in the West didn't perform that well. It has a lifetime domestic gross of 43 million. And now Ted 2. Yeah, so maybe his brand of comedy, people are turning away from him fast. So we'll see what he will do next. And then we'll know, like 3 makes a trend. So has one more strikeout to go. So before we can write off Seth MacFarlane. But yeah, Ted 2, disappointing considering how the first movie did. Okay, moving on to number 6 is Max. Also in the second weekend, it made 6.6 million, 45% drop off. 45.6% drop off. It did well considering that is indie movie about a bomb sniffing dog whose handler was killed in action, and then because he couldn't work with the dog couldn't work with anyone else, he has to be shipped back home, and then his deceased soldier's brother had to take care of him, and then they form a bond, and then the dog recovers and learn to trust again. Patriotic movie. It did well in the southeastern region because of the military families. These kind of movies speaks to them, and all things considered, 25 million in the second weekend is probably going to do 35 and Lifetime, so or more. It's considered a pretty successful movie. The movie doesn't seem like it costs a lot to make. It's just one of those movies that just caters to a specific type of audience, like the horror genre, except this is more for more patriotic southern religious families. All things considered, it did well. It's a successful Warner Brothers, and even though the earnings is low, hey, they make money. Okay. Moving on to number 7 is Spy, the Paul Feig action comedy. For the weekend, it made 5.1. In its 5th week, it made 97.5 million. So hey, it already did better than Tammy, the other Melissa McCarthy comedy, and it's gonna cross 100 million. It's another successful comedy. I mean, even though it might not be at the same level as The Heat or so, it still did well. Right now, anything that Paul Feig and Melissa McCarthy touches turns to gold. Let's see, and worldwide, the movie made 204 million. So it's another success for the Melissa McCarthy Paul Feig team. Okay, moving on to number 8 is San Andreas, the disaster movie about the earthquake in California. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson plays a helicopter pilot who has to travel north from Los Angeles to, I guess, San Francisco with his estranged ex-wife to rescue their daughter. And along the way, they encounter all sorts of obstacles, created by the earthquake, like waves, huge waves, shaking, collapsing buildings, and of course the special effects. Let's see, in its 6th week, it made 2.8 million, a 47% drop from the previous week, and total domestic so far is 147 million. And yeah, this movie solidified Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson as an A-lister. Before his big movies were teaming up with others, like in the Fast and Furious movies, or special effects. Even though this is a special effect movie, this shows that he can carry a movie, right? So he can basically pick and choose his movie. And interestingly, Brad Payne, he was the director of the Journey movies. One of those special effect laden movies. They teamed up again, and it's another successful pairing for them. We'll see Dwayne Johnson headlining more movies later on in his solo efforts. Moving on is number 9, Me and Earl and the Dying Girl. It's an indie by Fox Searchlight Pictures, kind of stars some no names. Well, Molly Shannon's in there somewhere, but anyway, it's one of those indie movies that's in its 4th week. It expanded, gained additional theaters, and since we're in the $1 million range, right, it made 1.2 million. We're in the $1 million range. That's why we're seeing all these indies popping up. It's one of those comedy dramedies about a high school kid a girl is dying from leukemia, and he and his friend try to make movies to cheer her on. And they bond over all these things, etc., etc. I guess it's well reviewed. But hey, one of these indies movies that's gonna be there. It's gonna be well reviewed, but because it doesn't have stars, you're gonna see these low box office figures. Okay. And speaking of these type of movie, coming in number 10 is Dope. Dope is a movie that's well reviewed, extremely well liked by those who've seen it. But because a bunch of no-names starred in it, not a lot of people went out to watch it. It made 1.1 million over the weekend, and in its third weekend it made 14 million so far. Okay, I see that we're done with the top 10. So that means we move on to openings. For openings, we have The Gallows. It's a shaky cam found footage horror movie by the person who brought to you the Paranormal Activities, Jason Blum. And then we have the Despicable Me spin-off, Minions. Those yellow guys are getting their own movie. And then the thriller starring Ryan Reynolds and Ben Kingsley. It's called Selfless. Let's start with The Gallows. The Gallows, if you don't know, is the platform scaffold thing that they use to hang people. So, it takes place in a high school kids. I guess during a play, one of the kids died from hanging, that's the name, The Gallows. And I guess that person came back for revenge. We don't know if it's a ghost or it could be some relatives. Or it could be, that guy who didn't really die or whatever. In any case, it's the same formula as all the horror movies. This guy who came back for revenge, and then they pick off the high schoolers one by one, and we see all the grisly things that go on and how they died, and of course the news. With these horror movies, they're like really cheap to make. With the shaky cam and the low production value. All it depends on it's those jump scares. They try to shock you. But hey, school's out, kids want to be scared, so it's gonna do well, but it's not gonna do the Paranormal Activity level well. It's not gonna do the the Insidious levels. It's not gonna do with what the Conjuring levels. Those have come and gone. I mean, we're getting back to the what these types of horror movies usually make. Usually lifetime gross is in the 45 to 50 million range. I think it's gonna do probably at best 50 million this weekend. It's going to open to 15 million, probably go on to make like what these kind of movies usually make. So we'll see. Personally speaking, the movie doesn't seem that good to me. Maybe because I've seen quite a few of them. I'm used to the formulas, but kids might still like it. Teenagers, who the target audience for these are, even though it's kind of R-rated. Okay, let's move on to the next movie, Minions. It's actually a prequel to the two Despicable Me movies. It tells the time before these, yellow dudes, guys, whatever, met up with Gru. And they tried to attach themselves to, the biggest villain of their time at that time. Yeah, if you ever wanted to see the Minions in their own movie, this is it. Let's see, the first Despicable Me movie opened to 56 million, and it went on to have a worldwide gross of 543 million. And then the second Despicable Me movie opened to 83 million, even larger, and it had a worldwide gross of 970 million. So yes, it's huge. That's why they spin off the movie, and they're doing a Despicable Me 3. So the Minion movie is actually just a stopgap, and it's kind of like the penguins in the Madagascar franchise. You know what? This movie is gonna be huge. There's a huge awareness for this movie because everywhere you go, there's things about Minions, right? There's ads everywhere, plastered. So I say this movie is gonna pull in probably somewhere in the 60 to 65 million range. I wouldn't be surprised if it pull in more, but that's what I'm going with because there's still Inside Out in theaters, and there's still going to be Jurassic World in theaters. All right, let's move on to the other new release called Selfless. Self/less stars Ryan Reynolds and Ben Kingsley. It's a movie. Ben Kingsley stars as this rich guy who's dying, and then a scientist offered him the opportunity to extend his life by transferring his consciousness into the body of a younger man who looks like Ryan Reynolds, played by Ryan Reynolds. It's one of those morality tales, right, about how far one is willing to go to extend one's life. This movie could be one about the organ trade, could be like growing organs and then using that as a body parts, cloning people as body parts. Yes, and Selfless is in that mode. In the movie, once Kingsley's character consciousness is transferred to Ryan Reynolds, he's starting to get these side effects. The memories from the younger guy is starting to flood his consciousness. He's starting to remembering things about that other life. And then, he found out that, hey, that scientist probably, that guy didn't die naturally. Probably went out and killed that guy, and then using that body. So yeah, it's one of those things, like how far are you willing to go to live longer? Will you be willing to take another person's life? Because hey, these bodies, these organs, doesn't come from nowhere, right? It has to be from somebody else. And as thrillers go, it's kind of interesting premise, but Ryan Reynolds is not that huge of a box office draw. But the movie itself, I think, stands on its own. It's interesting enough. I say it will probably do somewhere in the 20 to 25 million range. Depending on how big of draw Ryan Reynolds is, it could be more, it could be less, but that is the range I'm putting it at. And we'll see. Okay, so remember to tune in next week and see how my predictions went. And I believe Sin will be back next week, so we're going to be on our regular schedule. You don't have to listen to me talk all by myself anymore. hopefully. All right, that's it for this week. Everyone, see you next week, and thanks for listening. Okay, bye.